Everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about some enhancements to the dark pool data dashboard on TradingView and break down some of the new correlations shown. For more information, be sure to check out my previous dark pool video, which I'll leave a link for in the description. Before we get started, I'll leave several referral codes for trading services I use in the description as well, including TradingView, Elite Trader Funding, and TradingView that will give us both discounts. Lastly, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow this channel. With all that being said, let's get right into it. I already did a video on breaking down how we can use all this dark pool data in the dark pool dashboard, and just in case you're not familiar, if we go to left toolbar and we choose dark pool, we can search whatever ticker we're interested in, and these are very valuable for more than just SPY, QQQ, or the main ETFs. You can really use this data on any ticker. And in the previous video I talked about how we can look at dark pool levels and the densities shown here, as well as the dark pool amounts, the block trades, to get an idea of the sentiment. As you can see, SPY is looking very bearish if we're basing this off of the dark pool data. And again, I get into all this in a different video. However, TradingView added some new features that I want to talk about here, just to make sure that they're well understood by everyone, because it can be a little confusing, especially if you're not used to looking at a scatter chart or scatter graph. Now, what we first see here, and these two charts actually go together, so we can see this dark flow. And essentially, since with dark pool data, with the exception of it being a block trade, we don't have an idea of what the sentiment was. Now, there's also a new feature. Unfortunately, none of it's popping up here, which we can see signature dark pool trades, which does also help with sentiment. They make some assumptions, basically, whether or not the dark pool trade is above or below us, if it's going to be bearish or bullish, and those usually pop up at the beginning of the day. So I highly recommend checking this dashboard every morning, for whatever ticker you plan to trade, to check those signature prints to see if they indicate bullishness or bearishness. It's useful to look up, and it pops up here. But this dark pool flow data here, we can actually see how dark pool volume and price action correlate with one another. And what you'll see here is whenever we have these large amounts of dark pool volume, it usually correlates with a trend shift in SPY, which is very interesting. And this is a great example of it. Now, this was the COVID crash, of course, and there was a ton of dark pool volume coming in, and we had this massive sell-off. But we can see with even these smaller trend shifts, where we have some choppiness, some bearish action, we get a large amount of dark pool volume coming in, and then this uptrend resumes. And we can see these spikes below. Of course, it's heavily outweighed by the COVID crash, but we can see with these spikes below how they impact price movement. And that's essentially what this dark pool correlations chart tries to help us with here. So let's talk about what these dots mean and what the comparison time is. So we'll go to the 7-day chart, and essentially what we're trying to do is figure out, based on historical correlations. So every one of these white dots represents an historical correlation on how much SPY's price changed within, in this case I chose 7 days. So over the next 7 days, how much did SPY's price change based on the amount of dark pool volume coming in? So what kind of volatility can we look at? What kind of expectation do we have from this dark pool data? So each dot is a historical day, and it takes the dark pool flows from that day, so essentially the total amount of dark pool volume on the day, then looks at the future, and which is based off historical data. It's based off past data to see the future change in price, which gives each dot on there. And it essentially is looking at every day over the past year. It has to be limited because there'd just be far too many dots if not. And so if we look at the white dots all the way out here, for instance, so let's take this white dot in the far right. In this point in time, we can see that we had 35 million dark pool flows coming in. And if we hover over this, we can see that there was a 10% change in SPY's price based off these 35 million flows coming in. So when we had this huge spike, we had a 10% positive change in SPY's price. Now, we can also see down here, again, we don't necessarily know sentiment, so we're using volumes here. We can see that when we had almost 26 million worth of dark pool flows coming in, we had a negative 12% drop in SPY's price. So that gives us these historical correlations. So now we can actually look at where we're at now, which is this orange dot, and we can get an idea of how SPY's price will change as volumes change. So I'm trying to hover over it here, but it's a little difficult. So we can see we had roughly 9.2 million in dark pool flows, and if we just look at the extremes of this based off the historical data, we're looking at roughly a 5% change one way or the other, more like a 4% change roughly one way or the other, that SPY's price will change, which means that in this, again, this is over the course of the next 7 days. So a 4% move over the course of the next 7 days isn't really that much. I mean, that's relatively flat. So if we just look at SPY in this case, and let's just take a tool to see what kind of move that would look like. So we'll get as close as we can to SPY's current price. And again, it's helpful to look at this stuff right before open, so we know where SPY's price is. But if we just look at a 4% move here, I mean, and thinking about this over the course of the next 7 days, right? So negative 4%, and actually let's just even give it 5% based on those white dots, right? So let's be a little generous here. Let's see a 5% move. I mean, we're looking at SPY going from roughly 403 to 397.50. I mean, that's nothing. And then we can do the same thing to see positive. We can see that based on previous dark pool volumes, that we could see it go from around 402.50 to around 408 potentially. And now again, it's important to note that this is based off dark pool data. And of course, what's really nice about this is we can see, okay, if those flows shift, meaning we start getting 15 million worth of flows, now all of a sudden we can see how SPY's, the price move over the course of the next 7 days might shift to give us a bigger move. So now we're looking at 6.5% to the upside and maybe even 9% to the downside potentially. So that means if, let's say, we start seeing bearish signature prints come in, bearish block trades coming in, and we see more dark flow coming in, all of a sudden we get pushed from the 9.3 million mark over closer to the 12 million mark. That might be indicating that within the next 7 days, we might see SPY's price drop 9%. And this is really powerful stuff, and I haven't talked about it yet, so I don't have a video to reference. But if we reference this with the options dashboard on SPY, and we correlate that with Vanna and IV, things like that, Gamma, Vanna, all of the second order Greeks that for dealer positioning, and we combine those things just to get an idea of how SPY's price might move. Now, this isn't the best correlation here, but let's see here. We can see that this is showing us roughly, but now this is within the next 1 day, we're looking at about, on average, a 1% move, which is pretty in line with these dark flows, meaning over the course of the 7 days, you know, we're looking at anywhere from 4.5 to 5% move. We can see that we're sort of at a holding pattern here where it's looking more and more, unless we start seeing more significant volumes or some sort of catalyst, which we always want to make sure that we check market news to look for upcoming catalysts that could bring a lot more buying or selling into the market. And it looks like tomorrow, which is Tuesday, August 30th, we do have some news happening with job openings and quits that can certainly, consumer confidence index can also be a big one. So it's possible that we get some bad news here that's interpreted as bad news from smart money, and then we start to see a drop and we see more flows coming in and we see second order Greek shift, and then all of a sudden we're dropping. But all things left as is and none of this changes, that we can expect to see SPY pretty flat for the next 7 days. So anyway, I just wanted to cover this. Again, make sure you check out my other dark pool video to get more insight on how to use these other tools. But I love these new correlation tools because they don't necessarily tell you, oh, we're going to move up this amount because of this exact thing. It gives us an idea based on historical data, how did we move in the past, and that helps us get pretty accurate assumptions on how we might move in the future and how that would shift if we see changes in the market, because the market's always changing, price is always shifting. the amount of volume coming in is always increasing or decreasing, and that can have a dramatic impact on the price of the underlying asset and the volatility of the price swings. We can also see if if those flows drop down. So looking at six and a half million, all of a sudden we're back to an 8.5% gain possibly, and less of and interestingly enough, I mean, it's only like a 3% drop. So it's a really cool tool. I highly recommend checking out when you are doing your preparation in the morning. And of course, let me know if you have any questions, and I appreciate you watching.